In the last video, we talked about how to set up and install TERMAGEDDON. Now I actually want to show you how to customize it on your website. In Squarespace specifically, so this is a Squarespace specific tutorial for styling these pieces, but use your imagination because it probably works in whatever platform you're using instead. Before I dive into that, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. If we haven't met before, my name is Caitlin. I run Launch the Damn Thing. I am a Squarespace web designer and educator, and I am going to be a CSS nerd with you today. So let's hop in. I wanted to give you an overview of what is in each of these snippets so that you know which elements you can change and mess around with, stuff that you could add or remove, that kind of thing. So first, we're going to look at styling the policy itself. That's the embedded policy on your legal page. Specifically, that is this part right here. Not this part right here. This part is the button for the settings. This part is your policy itself. So this is what we're going to be styling, because remember when we were in TERMAGEDDON, we selected to change all of the H2s to H3. So I have set that in the code here. So notice at the top of the code, there's notes in here. Anything that is marked with 2 slashes or a slash and an asterisk at the front and the end, those are actually notes, not part of the code itself. That's just to tell you what each section is doing so that you know what to change and where. So first note is changing the heading font, and we are targeting only in the policy. The H3 or heading 3 is supposed to be styled like this. That means you can actually change the font family if you want to. I have in my branding the display font. For something like a policy, I didn't really feel like that was a great fit, so I decided to revert to my paragraph font. So I am actually saying use this font family instead of what's traditionally used in my headings, and you can do that too if you want to. Otherwise, just remove it. If you're happy with your normal and you don't have to override any headings, like just get rid of that whole line. In that same vein, if you are changing the font, you also want to change the weight. This is where you can do that. So it depends on the font itself. My particular font has lots of different weights, so I can decide how heavy I want it to be by changing the number in increments of about 100. I think it's like 100, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 900. I'm not sure if there's an 800. That's just something you have to know from having the font files, looking at it in Site Styles and Squarespace. If you don't know, just put bold. Replace that 400 number with literally the word bold, B-O-L-D. That changes your font. Again, if you don't want to change the font, you like it how it is, just remove that line. The next section is going to target the Accordion titles. That is this area right here. So I don't remember what this was, but I want to say it was also a heading 3. I didn't want it to look like headings, so I want to make the heading inside the accordion only. This font in this size in that weight. I have word spacing in here, so you can get rid of that if you want to. That's actually the space between words. So there is word spacing. There's also letter spacing. You're probably more familiar with the letter spacing property value. The color is for the text itself. So in here, I wanted it to be black rather than the kind of dark coral color that I use in the headings here. Reason being, I didn't want it to look like something necessarily clickable. Most of my links are in that color, but I think here you kind of get the idea that these are actually headings, not links. So anyway, trying to stay away from being confusing. Change the color value if you want. Please note, where it says at black, that is actually a variable CSS, where I have established what that color is outside of this snippet. In my custom CSS on my website, at the top, I have variable fields. If I can scroll, there we go. I have variable fields that I am setting. That way, I only have one place to change the color or the hex code, and if I'm using this variable throughout all of my custom CSS, then I know it will automatically update. So that is what the @black means. If you do not have those established, it will not work. So if you want to use a color that's specific to your brand, use the hex code or the RGB code, whatever you actually are familiar with or know. Or if it's a straight RGB color like black, white, gray, those three are pretty normal. If you're talking about like red, blue, purple, green, yellow, those are going to be straight RGB colors that are blinding, harking back to the 90s era colors that we knew of on the internet. So you probably don't want to do that, but you can actually write normal color words here and it will pick that up, but they're ugly typically if they're not adjusted. So customize that to be whatever you want. Don't use the @ symbol unless you know that you have color variables already in place. This whole area is pasted into Custom CSS. So over here where I was just in, that's where my policy customization lives. So that's where you are probably going to put it. If you have the color variables, it will work. If you don't worry about it. The next step is adding the down arrow icon to the accordion table. I don't actually remember what it looked like before I put this in. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was a plus sign. I actually don't remember, but whatever it was, I didn't like it. So instead, I decided to say, before the accordion summary, add this icon. The content is that glyph, which I typed on my keyboard. Actually, on a Mac, you can get the keyboard viewer, which is this little thing right here. And you can search through here for like arrows. I don't know how you do this on a PC, otherwise I'd tell you. But you can search for arrows or triangle. That's where I got the icon from. Typed it in here. This is just the note telling you what that line of code is. If you don't want to change it, just delete the line entirely. The padding right is the space to the right of the icon. So because it wasn't there before, when I added it, it was up against the first letter of the title in the accordion. That didn't look great, so I gave it some room to breathe. You can change that number value if you want to. The color is the color of the icon itself, so you can decide whatever that's going to be. Again, use your best judgment, make it match your brand. On the policy table styles, this is a really easy thing to do. All I did was adjust the border radius from like 2 or 3 or 5 pixels, whatever it was by default, down to 0 because most of my website has sharp corners and I wanted to stick with that theme. Then I gave it a solid 1px border of black. So again, I'm using that variable field. You don't need the @ symbol. Replace it with just a word color or your hex code. You can change the weight of the stroke of that line or that border by increasing the 1px. You can also get rid of it entirely by saying none in place of all of this, or you can say 0 here. Then that kind of leaves this part and this part hanging, but not applying because the stroke is 0. So there's lots of ways that you can play with that. I think by default it was like a light gray color, maybe. I can't actually remember. Anyway, those are all of the values that you can use to change or customize the policy. There may be a few more. I'll try to find the TERMAGEDDON'S CSS cheat sheet. I referenced that to get these class IDs and the property values and all of that to target before I wrote the custom CSS for it. Moving on to the second piece, which is the button itself. When you get ready to install the actual Termageddon button, which is this thing right here, grab that embed code from Termageddon, which is under policies and then your cookie policy and consent tool, view embed code. This last one right here for the user-centric policy settings link. That is the thing that pulls up that module again so that the user can choose their privacy settings. When you paste that in, it's going to look like this. And that's why I said I decided to make it look like a button because this has no color associated with it. It has no underline associated with it. So in no way does that look like a clickable thing until you hover over it. When I'd be out of edit mode, my cursor would change to pointer from an arrow. That's the only indicator that it's actually a link. So I think that it needed custom CSS to make it look like something that you can click on. I needed to add a snippet of custom CSS to the code block so that I could style it here. So what we're actually doing, this is all in a code block. You can do it all in the same block. It doesn't have to be split between a code block and custom CSS. The reason why is because this is an HTML style tag, which allows me to use CSS in between the style tag. This is the HTML note, not part of the code, but just to tell you what all is in here. And then I'm centering the link. I have a center HTML tag. That's the first part of the tag, and that's the end tag. You have to have both pieces. Paste in your Termageddon code here, from right here, where I've highlighted. And then underneath that is where you can style the link that you just pasted, saying I want it to be this weight. You can remove that for a thinner weight font if you want, or you can literally just say bold here instead of, you can change the color. This is the text color, not the background color. What we're doing here is we're styling the link itself. We're saying we want the font color to be white. We want the font size to be in EM rather than pixels because it's more responsive in EMs. Text transform states that I want it to be in uppercase. You can remove that if you don't want to full width text case and just let it be. I think it's in title case when it comes through. So yeah, first letter is uppercase, the rest of the letters are lowercase. Letter spacing just says give each letter some room. The background color states, it puts the background state around the link itself. So this is what makes it visually look like it's a button. You can decide whatever that color is going to be, so change the color here. The padding is what gives it the space around the text, so you can play with these number values and see which one you think looks the best in your particular branding scenario. This second piece is the hover state of the button. So when your mouse moves over the button, what happens to indicate that it's something that you can interact with. And the reason I gave it a hover state was exactly for that. Like, I didn't want it to just look like a button. All the other buttons on my website have some sort of interactive hover state, and I wanted these to have that as well. So in this case, I added a pseudo value of hover, which is targeting specifically what happens when the mouse hovers over the element. Then it changes the background color. In your case, you want to change that color. I use my gold or mustardy color for mine, but I just put red there so that you can see that you do want to change it. This is the color of the text. So if you want to keep the text a certain color, you don't need to change that again. You've had it up here, so that will stay when you hover over it. But if you want it to be a different color, for example, black, if you want to kind of invert it on hover, you can change that here. So if you want to leave it the same, you can take that line out completely and just change the background color if you want. That's up to you. This little snippet you can plug in everywhere. So here I've said color is white, background is my light black. When I hover over it, I'm out of edit mode. So just go back in. There we go. So in the hover state, as soon as my cursor is over it, it changes the hover state style. So that's how you use the two snippets of code that I am sharing with you related to the Termageddon. Using Termageddon with your clients is actually pretty easy. There are a couple of things that I have learned that are not really hiccups, but like good things to know for the process. So first and foremost, you're going to ask them to sign up on their own, like buy their own license. They only need one license per business. I should make a note of that. So if they have multiple businesses and they want to put this on multiple different websites, they need multiple different licenses also. Most clients of mine only need one license. So they sign up, they get their own license, and then they give you their login so you can go in and grab the code once they are done doing the setup. You might have to log in with them, show them how to use it a little bit, like this is how you create a policy, this is how you assign a license, and then you can create the policy. Then you have to answer all the questions. Make sure they do this. Do not guide them through that part. You don't know their business, you don't know what they're doing. You can answer basic questions about what their website will or won't collect if you know without a shadow of a doubt. Yes, we are collecting names. Yes, we are probably collecting IP addresses because that's part of analytics. Names are built into the forms, the contact forms, or the CRM. They're also probably in the email marketing sign up. So there are certain questions you can answer, but you don't want to say, yes, answer it this way, yes, answer it that way, because that gives you some sort of legal liability. So ask them to fill it out to the best of their knowledge. Ask you about website specific questions, not legal specific questions, and then take all their other questions to TERMAGEDDON support. They will answer generic questions like that. Pay attention to the popular tags, which it will say throughout the filling out of these questions, like this is a popular answer because this is right for most people, that kind of thing. And also remind them that if they click the question mark on any of those questions, they can actually read more about the circumstance and why that question is being asked in the first place, which might give them context to understand what's being asked. So keep that in mind. Once they are done filling it out on their own, then you can grab the embed code and install it onto Squarespace for them. They will appreciate that. Most clients don't like to do that part themselves anyway. This also gives you the space to use what I've shared today in Custom CSS to customize those pieces for them and make it really seamless experience. For designers, at least as of time of recording, TERMAGEDDON has a great partner program where you can use it yourself and share an affiliate link with your clients, and you can get a recurring commission from their use of the platform. So if they pay annually, I think I get like $25-ish per person. It doesn't cost much to start with. It's like $100-ish a year, 120 or something like that as of time of recording. So it's not a huge expense. The commission is pretty good and it's pretty easy because TERMAGEDDON can manage all of the onboarding for you if you want. You can pass that through and send them a link and they can get onboarded from them. That's pretty easy to manage. Share the link, get the client to create the account, show them how to start the process, get them to finish the process, then you log back in, grab the code, put it on the website, done, end of story. And TERMAGEDDON handles all the follow-up too. So when the law changes and there's another question for them to answer, they get an email. They know that they need to go into TERMAGEDDON and update their policy, and it will automatically reflect on their website without having to reinstall the code again, which is the one thing that I love about TERMAGEDDON for privacy policy and cookie policy stuff specifically, rather than the old template model, which is still fine if you want to keep up with that stuff yourself, but I have fingers and a lot of pies these days. I don't really have time to do that, nor do I trust myself to keep up with it. So it's easy to use this with clients, right? And I think that you should give it a shot and test out all the different kinds of subscription model legal policy stuff to see what's a good fit for you. I really like TERMAGEDDON specifically, but that doesn't mean that the other options aren't good ones. Like I've investigated iubenda, I just decided not to use them myself because I just like TERMAGEDDON better, and I also like their partner program features better. So that's it for this video. I hope that helps you style the pieces and figure out how to use it for your clients. I think it's a great solution. It's an affordable solution, especially for the clients that don't like the idea of spending $1,000 on policies, which is understandable. And also it stays up to date for them. So one less thing for them to worry about on the average. It's a little bit of legwork to get set up, but once it's done, it's done. And it's such a cost efficient, time efficient solution. So as a reminder, you can get 10% off your first purchase if you use my code LAUNCH10 for that discount. It applies to your first year. So I hope that was helpful for you today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.